Hello and welcome back to part 2, chapter 2, whatever. Chapter 2 of the Harry Potter queer reread. Me reading The Philosopher's Stone for the last time. And this chapter, the second chapter, is kind of a doozy. I have a lot of notes to go over with you. Yeah, there's a lot. So this is going to be a bit of a longer video, and I hope that's okay. And I just want to let you know that this series is now exclusively on YouTube. I will not be posting any videos of this kind onto TikTok because they have made it clear that they do not support or want to hear from trans creators or queer creators. They just keep censoring us, shadow banning us, and that's the end of that. So instead, I'm going to keep this series exclusively on YouTube, which will also mean that there won't be any default captions. It sucks, I know. But I'm going to try to enunciate as best as I can so that the default captions will be able to record what I'm saying as best as possible. Additionally, once I figure out how to add captions to my own videos, I will do so. Please be patient with me. I understand. Trust me, I understand the importance of subtitles. So, with that said, Chapter 2. What's Chapter 2 effing called? I think it's called... I hate this book. Like, I'm starting to really loathe. The Vanishing Glass. So Chapter 2, The Vanishing Glass. So this is obviously the one where we get, like, a first-hand perspective of Harry's innate magic, pure blood magic, whatever. Who gives a shit? So I'm just going to read my notes, and then, of course, I'll be peppering my notes with addendums, as usual. And, yeah, so here we go. Chapter 2. The more I read, the more I wonder if J.K.R. has some kind of sadism towards anyone not status quo. Or perhaps anyone's status quo. These stories are supposed to be about questioning authority and righteously breaking the rules, but it seems only to apply to cisgender people. J.K.R. has literally called trans people and our supporters muggles in the past, and yet she's more muggle than anyone else. In her own stories, a muggle is someone from the outside, literally shunned by said status quo. And J.K.R. has always written as though she cares for the underdog and supports bucking the system. But she's the biggest supporter of cis heteronormativity to date. One of the most popular ones, too. I will never fully understand this cognitive dissonance of hers. It makes all she wrote about questioning authority and the status quo a series of elaborate lies written and pandered for children. But why? J.K.R. may fancy herself a Potter, but we all know now that she's either Petunia or at best or Umbridge at worst. She literally has Harry Potter live in a closet, and somehow she doesn't expect queer kids to identify with that at all, especially trans kids. Okay, Joanne. We're also introduced to J.K.R.'s series-long fatphobia. In the form of a literal child. And as someone fat, I'm speaking up on this. It's personal, and it's also gross. I don't understand this woman at all. Don't bully kids. Don't bully kids unless they're fat or a byproduct of toxic heteronormativity. Let's make this clear. In this series, Dudley is a 10-year-old. He is a 10-year-old going on 11. Actually, no, he's not 10. He's 11. He's a child. He's a literal child. He's a minor. He's not even a teenager. And J.K. Rowling, just bullies the crap out of him. And I understand that it could be a catharsis for the bullied child. I understand that as a bullied child who does desire catharsis in their media. But this is fatphobia. And it's fatphobia, and it's blaming the child for their conditioning that their parents did. Blaming a child, bullying a child for what their parents did to them. It's gross. It's really gross, Joanne. Don't do it, but you do it anyway. By the way, I may end up doing a deep dive of Casual Vacancy or whatever, or Causal Vacancy, her adult book, because that book is disgusting. It's racist, sexist, homophobic. It's gross. It's nasty. It would mean I'm not buying it, though. I'm going to borrow it, but if I ever do it, I'll let you know. Anyway. This is gross hypocrisy, and it's permanent, too. There are no good fat people in JKR's bigoted fantasy land. Interestingly, Harry is a lot meaner than I remembered and shares JKR's utter loathing for fat people. It's rather gross, and it serves only to make Harry seem just like his family that he claims not to be. Should we change his name to Dursley? The way Dudley is treated is partly not his fault, like I mentioned, as he's clearly being groomed and manipulated to be as toxic as his nasty parents. The other part, the one any child can control, seems to be reminiscent of what JKR claims not to be but is. Quote, little tyke, in parentheses, he's 10, 11, end quote, end parentheses, wants his money's worth just like his father, attaboy, end quote. That's on page 22, and that's after Dudley starts crying about not receiving enough presents. His father encourages it. How is that his fault alone? Anyway, also, this page is the first mention of the squib, Mrs. Figg, who was assigned by Dumbledore to watch over Harry, and uselessly, as she has no magic, so why would you do that? Harry even calls her mad. The douche, on page 22. He's even happy he broke her leg. Are we sure we're supposed to like this kid? More gross grooming. Dudley cries and Petunia babies him, calling him Ickle Duddykins. And he's faking to manipulate. But sure, it's our fault. Anyway, on pages 23 and 24, it merely confirms all that I said earlier about the status quo and Harry's place in it. On page 24, literally, Harry calls Dudley a gorilla with blonde hair. I know being bullied makes us angry and say things back, especially in our heads. I know. But honestly, most of these kinds of observational comments seem rather out of character later on. It makes me think that it's just JKR using her protagonist to spout fat phobia and harm. I'm aware that he is also a child. But come on, none of this makes sense later. Especially when he's seen as like a humble, modest child for his upbringing. On page 27, it's ironic that this dream comes true. I know, but did it have to? Why make Harry suffer abuse and starvation at all? The dream is that he would be someday rescued by family he didn't know about, and that would make his life better and complete, and he would finally find his place in it. And his dream does come true, but why make Harry suffer all the abuse and starvation at all? He even mentions being greeted by wizards and witches. So why couldn't he... Why couldn't he have just been raised by them in the world instead? Being muggle raised adds absolutely nothing to his character. Not even modesty or humbleness either. Save needing to learn about the wizarding world alongside us. He's a protagonist tool in order for us to learn about the world because Harry's stupid and didn't know. There are better ways to do this. Anyway. It seems like a lazy gimmick for a lazy world building. And while, yes, these are kids' books, so what? That prevents them from being intelligent and coherent? No way. This whole strangers being kind to him is a really bad thing to put in a series aimed at kids, as it may make them question a suspicious adult's kindness and in the wrong ways. I don't know. I'm so jaded after just this one chapter. I'm so upset by all of this. So yeah, that's chapter 2. Chapter 3 is worse. Chapter 3 is much worse. But that's chapter 2. Essentially, like, it's just all indicative. Like, it's so indicative of how this person thinks, of how the author thinks. Anyone who says that you can separate the art from the author in this series, especially to date, and especially since she's retroactively called the Death Eaters trans people, how can you defend the series? It doesn't matter how queer you make it, how queerify you make it. This is a series based on hatred. And while it's very nice, there are better magical books out there. And I'm going to keep going and make it clear that this series is not the one you want to put everything on. Thank you.